The last thing I heard from the Ardeal was Petya Oren's voice reading a seal check on buoy 19. She was 3 syllables into the relay confirmation code when the signal ended. Not degraded. Not lost to interference. Ended. Hard-clipped at the carrier level. The way a signal ends when the transmitter is no longer there to send it. I had been sitting at the primary log receipt terminal on the Lunar Logistics platform, initialing the Ardeal's morning status package, when the waveform on my display went flat. The timestamp on Petya's last word was 064107 station time. The debris signature reached our passive array at 064148. 41 seconds, traveling at light speed from the outer relay grid. I knew before the system had finished processing. I had spent 26 years reading signals telemetry. The debris pattern was not an accident. The SORA Directorate had been monitoring our relay expansion for 14 months. We knew they watched us. Most navigational authorities in that sector did. What we did not know, what the Directorate had never communicated, through any channel, to any Earth-flagged authority, was that they had designated a navigational exclusion zone across the outer grid's operational range. No notification, no boundary marker, no hail to the Ardeal as it approached the outermost buoy. They had simply filed the zone in their internal registry and treated trespass as grounds for immediate lethal correction. The word correction was theirs. It appeared in the incident classification they transmitted to Earth 9 days later, routed through standard administrative channels, in a document that cited navigation protocol violations and expressed no regret, and requested that Earth confirm receipt and close the incident. 214 people. The Ardeal carried engineers, relay technicians, communications specialists, 3 apprentice riggers who had shipped out on their first deep space contract. A medic named IRL Sante, who had turned down a hospital placement on Earth because he wanted to see what was out there. The youngest crew member was 22, the oldest was 64, a senior array specialist named Devath QL, who had spent 11 years building the relay network from the inside out, and who had sent voice messages home to his daughter on Earth every single week without exception. The week he died, his message was already queued for transmission. It went out on schedule, 6 hours after the Ardeal's debris field reached equilibrium. His daughter received it before she received the notification. I know this because I signed the notification myself. I needed to know the order. Earth confirmed receipt of the Directorate's incident closure request. Then, Earth authorized the Vethani accounting. I was told about the authorization by Commander Seveth Nar on the afternoon of Day 11, in her office aboard the ISV Caranthan. She had requested me by name. I was the project lead who had built the relay network, the one who had handed Petya Oren her first assignment brief and signed Devath Quill's last renewal contract, the one who had been at the terminal when the signal went flat. Nar told me she needed a signals observer who understood the infrastructure, someone who could confirm, sector by sector, that each SORA relay element had been correctly identified before removal. She used the word removal with the same weight she would have given any operational term. No emphasis, no pause around it. She described the task and waited for my answer. I said yes before she finished the sentence. 408 warships had already been repositioned by the time I boarded the Caranthan. I did not know the military designation structure well enough to name them all, but I knew what they looked like from the outer viewing gallery, a formation so large it occluded the navigational lanes on the passive array, not one ship but a moving density, organized into columns I could not fully count. I had spent most of my adult life working in deep space, and I had never seen anything assembled at that scale. I did not feel reassured by it. I did not feel safe. I felt what I imagine a surveyor feels when she returns to a building site and finds that the ground has been prepared more thoroughly than she had specified. The dimensions had been measured correctly. The response was proportional to something, but not to anything I had chosen. We did not open a channel to the SORA Directorate, not one. The Caranthan's bridge crew ran in near silence. Commander Nar issued orders in low, specific sentences. Positions were confirmed, designations relayed, and each element of the accounting moved forward with the same procedural precision the Directorate had used when it filed its exclusion zone. Quietly, methodically, without announcement. I sat at the Signals Observer Station and ran identification cross-checks against the Directorate's own published registry coordinates. Every beacon located on my board was confirmed before the collection teams moved. The first sector fell in 6 hours. The SORA maintained 43 relay beacons across that sector, each one a navigational anchor for traffic moving through a trade corridor that the Directorate had administered for nearly 2 centuries. We removed them one by one. The removal team did not destroy them. That had been specified in the authorization. SORA property was not to be damaged. It was to be collected, catalogued, and held. Every beacon was logged with a serial number, a removal timestamp, and a precise coordinate entry. The accounting kept records the way the Directorate kept records. That had also been specified. By the end of the first day, 11 beacons had been removed and logged. The SORA Directorate sent no response. No query on any channel. No navigational warning. No demand that we identify ourselves or state our purpose. I noted that in my observer log. I noted it carefully, with a timestamp. I thought about Deveth Queel that first night. Not sentimentally. I have learned, over many years, not to mistake the memory of a person for an instruction about what to feel. I thought about him because he was a man who had spent his career leaving accurate records behind him. Every weld point on the outer grid had been logged by his team. Every calibration adjustment, every material substitution, every deviation from original spec, all of it documented, dated, signed. If you pulled the array construction files and read them start to finish, you would know exactly what Deveth Queel had done, and in what order, and why. The record was the work. He had believed that. He had transmitted that belief home every week to his daughter, in the form of a voice message that told her what he'd done that day, what he'd seen, what the grid looked like from the outer array scaffold in the long, flat dark. Postcards, she called them. He'd liked that. The SORA Directorate had his last transmission in their intercept logs. I was certain of it. They had the carrier frequency, the signal content, the cut point. They had Petya Oren's voice reading a seal check on buoy 19, and then they had silence. They had filed it. Somewhere in their administrative registry there was a line item, incident report, outer grid, navigational exclusion enforcement, no further action required. We removed 17 beacons on the second day. Sectors 3 through 7, the mid-corridor administrative chain. The SORA navigational network in that range was dense. They had been expanding it over several decades, anchoring trade routes, marking territorial approaches, building out the infrastructure of a growing bureaucratic reach. We were methodical. Every beacon located on passive scan, confirmed against the Directorate's own published registry coordinates, dispatched to the collection hold, logged. My observer station processed 42 confirmation checks that day. I ran every one of them without error. I had not allowed myself to make an error since the morning Petya Oren's waveform went flat, and I did not intend to start. On day 2, the Directorate sent a single query through a third-party routing channel. It asked for the purpose of our navigational activity and requested that we maintain standard clearance distances from active relay elements. Commander Nar read it on her display and then set it aside without comment. We did not respond. That also had been specified. The accounting did not open channels. The accounting did not acknowledge queries. The accounting moved through the sectors and collected what it had come to collect. I understood, by then, what the authorization was doing. It was not conducting a punitive raid. It was not making a show of force. It was conducting the exact same category of unilateral administrative action the Directorate had conducted when it established the exclusion zone. Systematic, documented, procedurally complete, executed without reference to the other party's consent or awareness. The Directorate had treated navigational authority as a power they held by default, exercisable without notice. The accounting was demonstrating, sector by sector, what it looked like when someone else held that power and exercised it the same way. There was a clarity to that I found I could hold without flinching. I pulled Petya Oren's personnel file on the evening of day 2 and read it for the first time since her assignment brief. 31 years old. Degree in Relay Systems Engineering from the Nairobi Technical Institute. Second deep space contract. Her first had been a 6-month posting to the inner array where she had been rated exceptional on calibration accuracy and team coordination. She had listed, under personal notes, that she wanted to be the person who got the outer grid to operational range before she turned 35. She had been on track. I closed the file and went back to my confirmation queue. 241 beacons removed by the end of day 3, all catalogued, all held in the Caranthan's collection inventory, with full chain of custody documentation. The signals traffic in the sectors we had passed through had gone quiet. Not the quiet of normal operations, but a listening quiet, the kind that occurs when a navigational network no longer has its anchor points, and everything downstream has started waiting for a status ping that is not coming. The Directorate sent 7 queries on day 3. The 4th one carried a formal header, a navigational authority designation, a protocol demand, a structured request for identification and statement of purpose. It went unanswered. The 6th was shorter and used a higher priority carrier. The 7th arrived in the early hours of day 4 and contained language our signals analyst said approximated emergency classification, the closest structure the Directorate maintained to a crisis communication. She noted this without particular affect. She logged the receipt timestamp and filed it with the rest. We did not answer it. On the morning of day 4, we entered the Sora home sector. The Directorate's exclusion zone buoys were there, 29 of them, placed at the boundary of the zone they had never disclosed to anyone. They were smaller than standard navigational beacons, built for internal use, the kind of marker that tells your own ships where the line is. They were, as far as I could determine, the only physical record the Sora had ever created of the zone's existence. The zone that the Ardeal had crossed without knowing it. The zone that had cost 214 people their lives and cost Petya Oren her last 3 syllables. We collected all 29. We catalogued them individually, more carefully than anything else in the accounting, because these were the items whose documentation mattered most. Serial numbers, dimensional specifications, internal frequency assignments, the registry codes that linked each buoy to the Directorate's administrative files. All of it logged, time-stamped, signed. I ran the identification checks myself on all 29. I wanted my name on every one. These were the proof that the zone had existed before the Ardeal arrived, that the Directorate had known exactly what it was enforcing, and had done so without one word of warning, to a crew that was still transmitting home when the salvo hit. Then we delivered them. 408 warships held station at the Sora home sector boundary, while a single courier vessel crossed into Directorate space and transmitted 1 entry, coordinates for a delivery point, and then moved to that point and released 29 sealed containers into the Directorate's primary navigational lane. Each container held 1 exclusion zone buoy. Each container was labeled with a serial number and a catalog entry, referencing its position in the accounting record. 1 container, the last to be released, carried a single additional document, the full transmission record of the Ardeal's final log, timestamp and waveform and content complete. Petya Oren's voice included, filed under Commander Nar's signature and marked received. We transmitted nothing further. No explanation, no demand, no ultimatum, no declaration, no invitation to respond. The containers drifted in the lane, and the accounting closed its collection log, and Commander Nar said, in the same low specific voice she had used throughout, that we were done, and we turned for home. I have thought since then about what the Directorate did with those containers, whether they opened them, whether they cross-referenced the serial numbers against their own files, and understood the full extent of what had been removed, whether anyone in their administrative structure read the Ardeal's final transmission log and heard Petya Oren's voice and understood, precisely, where the waveform went flat and why, and what the 41 seconds between her last syllable and our first debris read had cost. I do not know. It is not something I can confirm, and I have never logged things I could not confirm. That is not sentiment, that is method. What I can log is what we did, and in what order, and why. The record is the work. Devath Kuel believed that. I have come, at 58, to believe it too. 214 people sent their last transmissions home. We made sure the answer arrived.